Imagine drowning, but not in water. Drowning in daily struggles, in responsibilities that never stop piling up, in the internal voices screaming that you're not enough. That's how many people live, breathing chaos and suffocation day after day, unsure of where to turn or what to do. She was one of them. An ordinary woman like so many others, trying to keep everything together while feeling like she was falling apart inside. Work demanded more than she could give. Bills kept arriving, relationships were crumbling, and loneliness seemed to be her only companion. The world around her was so loud, yet the silence within was deafening. It was like being adrift in a boat, surrounded by towering waves, struggling not to sink. But every effort felt futile. The exhaustion was crushing, as if everything around her was a weight she could no longer bear. She kept asking herself, how much longer can I endure this? One rainy night, when it seemed the chaos would finally consume her, she looked up at the gray sky, filled with doubt, and whispered with barely any strength left, God, if you're there, please help me. And it was there, in the middle of the storm, at the height of her despair, that something began to shift. It wasn't a thunderclap or a visible miracle. It was subtle, almost imperceptible. A sudden calm, like the breeze that starts to soften before the storm begins to fade. The challenges still surrounded her, but something inside had changed. It was as if an invisible hand held hers, whispering, "You're not alone. I'm here." Now, even as the chaos around her slowly realigned, she felt something new. It wasn't the absence of problems but a newfound strength to face them. It wasn't an immediate solution, but the assurance that there was someone greater than the waves, someone who could bring peace amidst the storm. What happens when God answers? When He rescues someone from the depths of their struggles, not with grandeur but with gentleness, love, and serenity. The rain continued to fall outside, but something within her had shifted. The raindrops that once mirrored her tears now carried a sense of renewal. Still sitting on the floor of her living room, with trembling hands and tearful eyes, she felt that her desperate cry in the form of a prayer had reached somewhere. There wasn't a beam of light, no heavenly sound, but in the silence of her heart, something happened. It was a calm she couldn't explain, like an unseen voice saying, "I am here. Trust me." In the days that followed, her routine remained the same. The bills still piled up, the work pressures hadn't disappeared, but she noticed something new. Her perspective had shifted. Where she once saw impossibilities, she now saw small, manageable steps. It didn't matter how big the waves were. For the first time, she knew she didn't have to face them alone. She began to make small changes. Instead of being consumed by social media and news that only heightened her anxiety, she set aside a few minutes each day to open the Bible that had been gathering dust on her shelf. It was as if those words were written just for her, bringing comfort and guidance. At work, she started taking deep breaths before responding to each urgent email, reminding herself that not all battles needed to be fought at once. At home, she began to reclaim simple moments she had lost in the rush, enjoying a cup of tea or sitting by the window to watch the sunset. But the real transformation wasn't just in her actions. It was what was happening within her. Every time she felt the weight of the world creeping back in, she did something she had never done before. She handed her problems over in prayer. With a shaky yet confident voice, she would say, "God, I can't do this on my own. Show me the way." And He did. Not in grand or immediate ways, but in details that only she could notice. It was an unexpected conversation with a friend that brought encouragement. It was a financial solution that came just in time. It was the strength she felt on days when she thought she couldn't take another step. Meanwhile, the peace that had started as a whisper grew within her heart. It was like a small flame, fed by faith, beginning to illuminate the darkest corners of her life. She still had doubts and fears, but now she knew where to seek answers. One day, as she walked through a park to clear her mind, she stopped by a calm lake. The reflection of the water seemed so serene, such a contrast to the chaos that once ruled her life. And there, looking at that natural mirror, she realized something she had never understood before. True strength isn't in fighting everything all at once, but in trusting that someone greater is taking care of you. Life wasn't perfect, but it didn't need to be. She learned that chaos doesn't disappear overnight, but God can bring peace even in the middle of the storm. Her journey was far from over, but every step she took was proof that faith could transform the impossible into possible, chaos into peace, and tears into a new beginning. And you? Have you ever considered handing over the struggles of your life to someone who can carry them for you? The peace she found is available to anyone willing to take the first step. The storm raged around her, both literally and figuratively. The gusts of wind and the deafening sound of rain outside seemed like the perfect reflection of the chaos that dominated her mind. Sitting in the corner of her room with the lights off, she felt the weight of the world on her shoulders. Mounting debts, broken relationships, and an overwhelming sense of having failed at everything. Her mind was a whirlwind of unanswered questions. Why is this happening to me? How did I let my life get to this point? Is there any way out? She felt as if she was sinking into a stormy sea, too weak to fight against the waves. And then it happened. In the middle of that internal and external chaos, a silence filled the air. It wasn't the kind of silence that frightens, but an inexplicable pause as if time had slowed down. She took a deep breath, and for the first time in weeks she felt the need to stop fighting. With a trembling voice, almost unsure of what she was doing, she whispered, "God, if you're there, I need help. I can't do this on my own anymore." That plea wasn't planned. It was a cry from the depths of her soul, a sincere appeal born from her fatigue and desperation. And in that moment something changed. There were no bright lights, no extraordinary visions, but a feeling of warmth and calm took over her heart. It was as if an invisible presence was beside her, saying, "I'm here. I've always been here." With her eyes closed, she felt a peace she hadn't experienced in a long time. It wasn't the resolution of her problems, but the certainty that she wasn't alone anymore. And with that came an unexpected clarity. The next day the storm was still raging outside, but inside her, something was different. Instead of drowning in her worries, she began to think of small actions she could take. She grabbed a notebook and started listing her problems, not to despair, but to surrender them one by one. "Lord, this is my burden. I place it in your hands." Surprisingly, solutions began to emerge. A phone call from a friend she hadn't seen in years brought practical advice. An unexpected job opportunity appeared. And more than that, she began to realize that she didn't have to solve everything on her own. Her strength came from the trust that God was guiding her steps, even in the hardest moments. The storm still raged, but she no longer feared it. She knew she didn't have to overcome it with force, but to walk calmly, step by step, knowing that she wasn't alone. Sitting on the cold floor of her empty apartment, Anna hugged her knees tightly, trying to hold back the tears that kept falling. Bills were piled on the table, the silence seemed to scream in her ears, and the feeling of failure was suffocating, like an unbearable weight. She had lost her job, friends had drifted away, and even her health was starting to show signs of exhaustion. She looked up at the ceiling and whispered, almost without strength, "God, where are you? I can't do this anymore. I feel so alone, so lost." The echo of her own voice seemed to mock her, reinforcing the idea that no one was listening, that her prayers were thrown into the void. For a moment she almost gave in to despair. She thought about giving up on everything, but something inside her, though small, told her to wait, to breathe once more. As a last attempt, she grabbed the dusty Bible that had been forgotten on the shelf. She opened it randomly, and her eyes fell upon a verse that said, "Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." The words seemed to light up the room around her. Anna didn't know how, but she felt something different, something she couldn't explain. A gentle warmth began to surround her heart. It wasn't physical, but it was as real as the floor beneath her feet. She closed her eyes, and an image formed in her mind. It was as if she were being embraced. Not by someone visible, but by a presence greater than any pain she had ever felt. She cried, but this time her tears weren't just of sadness, they were tears of relief. It was as if, for the first time in a long while, she could release the burden she had been carrying. In the midst of the chaos, there was a promise that she didn't have to face everything alone. God was with her, holding her hands, guiding her steps, even when everything seemed to be falling apart. The phone rang, interrupting that moment. Anna wiped away her tears and answered hesitantly. It was an old coworker asking how she was doing. The conversation seemed simple, but for Anna, it was like a sign. Her friend mentioned a job opportunity that, coincidentally, aligned with her skills. After hanging up, Anna took a deep breath. It wasn't just about the call or the job offer. It was about something bigger, the certainty that God was orchestrating every detail, even in the darkest moments. She got up from the floor, still feeling the warmth of that invisible embrace, and realized that, though the struggle wasn't over, she was no longer alone. Clara was sitting on the edge of the bed, her eyes fixed on the window. Outside, the world went on as if nothing were wrong. People walked on the sidewalks, children played in the parks, and the distant sound of cars mixed with the birds' songs. But inside her heart, the silence was deafening. It was an emptiness she couldn't explain, as if she were being consumed by an invisible storm. The rent was overdue, work seemed to slip through her fingers, and the conflicts at home had become unbearable. She felt trapped in a constant battle, as though she were sinking in quicksand. The more she tried to escape, the more the weight of the circumstances pulled her down. It was the kind of pain that even tears couldn't express. With no strength to get up, Clara closed her eyes and whispered a short prayer, almost without faith. God, if you're there, please, help me. I don't know what to do anymore. There was no immediate answer. No voice, no miracle. Just silence. The same silence that seemed to mock her, yet at the same time wrapped around her in a different way. She allowed herself to stay there, not thinking about what to do next, just breathing. And in that moment of complete surrender, something changed. A light, almost imperceptible feeling began to spread within her. It wasn't as if the problems had disappeared, but their weight seemed to lessen. It was as if an invisible hand were touching her heart, calming the storm raging in her mind. Suddenly, the image of a peaceful field came to her mind. A green field, with flowers gently swaying in the wind, and a clear river flowing slowly. Clara didn't know where that vision came from, but it brought an unexpected comfort, as if someone were saying, I'm here. Don't give up. I'm taking care of you. When she opened her eyes, nothing around her had changed, but something inside her was different. Clara stood up and went to the kitchen, where a Bible had remained closed for years. She opened it randomly, and her eyes fell on a passage that said, Do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you, and uphold you with my righteous right hand. The words penetrated deep into her heart, as if they had been written for that exact moment. She felt the promise that she was not alone, that even in the chaos, God was working silently, guiding her to a place of peace and renewal. There were still bills to pay, problems to solve, and pain to face. But Clara began to realize that the struggle was not just hers. God was with her, showing that true strength didn't come from absolute control, but from trusting His plan, even when she couldn't see the way forward. Clara now felt something she hadn't experienced in a long time: hope. She didn't have all the answers, nor did she know how to solve every problem, but something inside her told her it was possible to keep going. God was by her side, sustaining her, guiding her steps, showing that true peace didn't depend on circumstances, but on trusting in Him, even in the midst of the battle. If you've ever felt like Clara, lost, tired, suffocated by the weight of life, remember that you're not alone. God is with you, ready to help you carry your heaviest burdens and bring peace to your heart. No matter how difficult the moment may seem, He has a perfect plan for your life and wants to guide you to a place of serenity and strength. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who might need to hear this message. Leave your comment below telling us what you thought or how you've been facing your own battles. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and activate the bell to receive more content like this. Together, we can spread more hope and faith in a world that so often seems to be in chaos. Thank you for watching, and remember, no matter how strong the storm, God is still greater. See you in the next video.